comes from all of us. Oh, I see. Now it makes sense.
What used to be one of my favorite developers and publishers, Inti Creates, has become a mixed bag recently. After the outstanding Blastmaster and Gunvolt entries, and an unexpectedly enjoyable Metroidvania spin-off of the Galgun series, the team has been all over the place. In 2024 alone, we've had Gunvolt Records, Psy Chronicle, Umbral Claw, and Puzzmix, all middling at best, outright dismissible at worst. Perhaps they're trying to spread their wings and find a new big hit while experimenting with other genres, and if that's the case, Inti Creates may have finally struck gold with Card-en-Ciel. This deck-building roguelike may seem like another random Inti Creates release not worth your time, but it's genuinely one of the most addictive and satisfying games this year that will, sadly, likely get overlooked.
Show 'em! Eat this!
That's another connection formed.
That was awesome sauce! Talk about earning respect!
Card-en-Ciel boasts an imaginative, captivating premise. It follows protagonist Neon in a futuristic setting where full dive VR games have become the norm. However, this technology growth has spawned numerous crimes, making his self-proclaimed profession of gaming chair detective very useful. One day in VR, he receives a strange request, leading him to meet a girl named Ansi and embark on an adventure involving the unprecedented phenomenon of game characters appearing in other game worlds. The narrative of Card-en-Ciel is one of its low points, but it doesn't detract from the enjoyment. The story serves more as a backdrop, and the game worlds Neon traverses are relatively self-contained. An overarching plot eventually impacts the real world, but I wish it was more consistently present from the outset to establish impact. On the other hand, the English voice acting is phenomenally well directed, doing a fantastic job of selling the growing relationship between these two characters.
Project RT. Yup, this is Rust Tactics. Full dive complete. Now then, you must be the one who sent me that request. I'm Neon Nanashiki. I assume you know me?
The gaming chair detective? Why are you here?
Huh? Wait. This is Salazar from Ginkendo's Monster Racing RPG, Capsule Creatures, isn't it?
On their own, the two aren't particularly thought-provoking, yet their dynamic is entertaining, especially when discussing the lore of the game worlds they visit and sharing their genre preferences. Still, where Card-en-Ciel truly shines is in its gameplay systems. This title is another departure for Inti Creates, being a roguelike dungeon crawler with unique standout implementations. For instance, the combat is undeniably inspired by the Mega Man Battle Network series, with Neon and his enemies on sets of colored squares. However, unlike Mega Man Battle Network, which was more oriented towards real-time action, Card-en-Ciel adopts a turn-based style. Battles are divided into phases between you and your opponents, and your actions are determined by your position on the grid and the cards you have. Cards have their own cost to activate and unique categorizations, such as those that emphasize raw damage or specialize in breaking an enemy's defensive gauge, a numeric value that, once reduced to 0, nullifies an enemy's action for the rest of the turn. Other integral factors include grid navigation, also operated by the cards in your hand. Each card has its own effect, but they can also be sacrificed for more movement. The top left shows which direction you'll move. Now, the number of actions remaining until the enemy's turn and their attack areas of effect are transparently communicated. Based on these factors, it's clear how much depth is in the combat system, and those are only the basics. What makes Card-en-Ciel so compelling is the standard battles run at rapid pace, creating a constant rewarding loop that remains fulfilling. Plus, you can choose how many battles you want to participate in, since you actively run around the dungeons and into enemy symbols to trigger encounters. Progression is then determined by defeating the floor's boss at your leisure. This design actually lets you shape the difficulty level to a certain extent. Since you gain new cards in every battle, it's up to you to decide when your setup is suitable for moving on. That said, the erosion level mechanic affects the self-imposed difficulty. This is essentially a gauge that dictates the strength of foes in this area, which you can reduce by defeating those surrounding the epicenter. Battles have a few more layers, such as action cards, which counter and negate damage if timed correctly when used on the turn before an enemy attack. The timing window feels overly lenient though. Further, taking a page out of the Gunvolt series, muses are present, playing integral roles both on the field and mid-battle. They actually deploy buffs and debuffs, and when on the field you can decrease their opposing efficacy by clearing surrounding enemy encounters on the map. In contrast, your muses activate based on specific battle conditions. Generally, this mechanic promises more strategy and decision making, but you'll often trigger muse songs without conscious consideration, especially since multiple muses can sing simultaneously, synergizing effects. Consequently, you'll probably only want to use muse effects during the boss battles, which tend to be decently challenging, even if that's primarily based on the luck of the draw with your deck. These songs tie into the immense amount of voice work that the title boasts, with most character cards having dedicated voice lines. It's actually impressive how many of these cards are expressed, even if it's only a line or two. Still, you'll hear these lines constantly during battle or when picking up cards as rewards, so that cycle can become somewhat grating.
Leave this to someone with talent.
Don't sweat it, partner. Just have a blast.
Yeah, agree.
Eat this!
Was it you that called out to me?
Verily, it was. Pleased to meet you, partner.
At least I appreciated the cameos from the other Inti Creates properties like Gunvolt and Galgun. At its core, Card-en-Ciel has a lot going on that may seem overwhelming at first, but it all clicks once you understand the general systems. It's a quick, thrilling ride, ideally suited for portability of the Switch, bolstered by the fact that clearing dungeons unlocks additional difficulties of the same area, feeding into the reward loop. The permanence of the roguelike structure is rooted in the currency you earn by clearing dungeons, with a limited amount earned per difficulty level. The currency enhances Neon's base stats, ensuring meaningful progression. It's a clever design choice that plays into the game's strengths, showing the team's confidence in their battle system. Permanence is also rooted in the wild cards. These are unique cards you're guaranteed to have on hand and can use once per run. However, one of my main frustrations with Card-en-Ciel is finding yourself on the battle grid without the necessary card types to dodge incoming attacks. This is dependent on RNG, and there's not much you can do about it, but losing runs due to reasons beyond your control doesn't encourage replays as much as it should. In fact, I sometimes felt that the card decks were too random, even as the wildcard system opened up, gradually increasing permanence. On the other hand, having the right synergies play out in real time feels worthwhile, so it's a double-edged sword rather than a clear-cut issue. Thankfully, the Grand Battle feature unlocked later in the story somewhat supplements the lack of permanence with player choice. Another critique I have regards the dungeons themselves. Cosmetic differences and slight deviations aside, they tend to be a repetitious cycle of endlessly connected shapes housing enemies and little else. Of course, the combat here takes center stage, and I'm glad that it does, but more variety and thought for these areas, besides the more challenging difficulty rules, would have been appreciated to mitigate monotony, which can creep in after back-to-back battles with little happening between them. This year has been a wild ride for video games, so many players will probably miss out on Card-en-Ciel, but if you find the time, it's an undeniably worthwhile gameplay-focused experience that wears its inspiration on its sleeve, yet boasts flavorful distinctions that sets it apart. At its best, Card-en-Ciel's compelling gameplay loop will keep you in its grip, reminding you of dungeon crawlers from yesteryear revisited in a more convenient and welcoming form. Plus, with the numerous vocal songs, captivating character art, and fantastic English dub, there's plenty to enjoy here. Noisy Pixel is giving Card-en-Ciel an 8.5 out of 10. Thanks for watching. This video is brought to you by our supporters on Patreon. Noisy Pixel is run by a group of gamers providing independent gaming coverage through news, reviews, previews, and more. Check out our Patreon to help support our continued growth, and subscribe to keep up with all our future content.
Noisy Pixel.